Okay. I'm about to go to the thing that this live feed is supposed to be about, which is Venezuela and whether or not we're going to war in Venezuela. But before I do that, I just want to bring up the fact that the U.S. House is about to interfere with name, image, license issues with regard to college
More than likely will be
athletes. They're marking up. Well, actually, they're not marking up. They're considering the rules for this bill when it hits the floor, which is called the SCORE Act. I believe it's going to hit the floor this week and change the rules around how college athletes are paid by their institutions of higher education, and what undoes the Supreme Court case of 2021, which was a unanimous decision in favor of the athletes. And you can absolutely rest assured when you see something like this. And by the way, I have this hat on not because this is about name, image, likeness, because I am a Giants fan, even though they're 2-10 or something like that, or 2-8. Anyway, I am a Giants fan. I'm from New York. At any rate, the U.S. House is about to probably mess up a bunch of money for a bunch of college athletes. I'm just going to cut to the chase because that's what this is probably going to be. I've seen these types of things before. It never fails that when the government gets involved in something like this, they get involved on the side of moneyed interests. They do not get involved on the side of individual people who are making money, who have the real talent or the real reason that we all show up to games. So I'm going to listen to a little bit of this before going to the Venezuela
If you see
issue.
that we do, you didn't think that was,
Well,
there was supposed to be some humor in that.
oh,
I mean, but my point is this, I mean, you're not, I don't care who you are, you're not worth the $6 million if you're not playing at a D1 team. Is that a fair statement?
yeah, if you're not worth, dude, like who?
Say that again? My point is that you're going to be playing for
Yeah.
a D1
Yeah,
school if you're going to be worth that kind of money.
yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm not sure the bill fixes the problems that exist. Now, I typically defer to the committees of jurisdiction, and I'm not saying that I'm not going to on this, but it, there's a total of 80 million is what's being reported, is my understanding, in the NIL
I
deals
can't
for this
dispute
year.
that because I don't have the numbers, but go ahead.
Does anybody know the numbers? What the NIL deals, what the total NIL deals are for 2025? $80 million? That's what I saw from one of the news sources.
I haven't
Nobody
seen
knows.
that, and I've been studying this for a while, but yeah. Okay. So it says more than 8,300 NIL deals worth 80 million approved new commission. That's what, by the new commission, that's what you're referring to,
Okay.
ESPN. So that's where you got it from. Yeah.
Okay. So are we going to take that as so we're going to pass a piece of legislation that's going to deal with all of this stuff. And I agree, what's happened with college athletics is horrible, but the whole NIL structure is $80 million for 2025, according to that article.
Yeah, again, I can't dispute that because I don't have any other evidence to say that it's wrong.
Well, let me ask this. So let's just say that you're the best athlete in the world, and you've got and your dad was a pro athlete, and so you have all the access that you want to an agent. But now we, by federal law, are going to set the maximum compensation that the agent can make. And I don't know any agents. I haven't
Well,
talked
I
to any
mean,
agents about
first
this,
of all,
but-
the agents are taking advantage of the kids, and they're going to have to register. And right now, the NFL charges 3%. And these agents, these supposedly agents that are in the best interest of the athlete, currently under current law, can charge up to 30% or higher. So they're taking advantage. So I think we need a cap on the agent's fee.
What do pro agents charge?
Pro agents, I said 3%.
3%.
Yeah, 3%. And these guys are charging 20, 25, some 30%.
But it's.
And they're not even registered. They're not qualified to be agents.
I'm not.
So we gotta solve that issue.
Listen, I'm a Republican, but I'm a big believer in licensure and.
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't have a problem as much with the licensure aspect of it, but if you're the best agent out there and you can bring value to your client, you're going to get the same 5% that the worst agent.
Well, these are amateur athletes and they need to be protected. I think we have a responsibility to do that.
They're
Now, the
adults.
NFL's different.
Well,
The
let me-
NFL's different.
Would you agree with me that they're adults? They're 18 years old.
Well, I guess they would be 17 as a freshman possibly. But you're right. I mean, most of them are over 18 or over.
I mean, this is the federal government stepping into a contract between two private individuals.
I just think that they need to be protected. There has to be guardrails, and I think that's a reasonable.
I don't.
That's a
I
reasonable.
don't
thing.
disagree that there have
Yeah.
to be guardrails.
Yeah.
I mean, licensure and other things provide the opportunity for guardrails. I just, my understanding is there are 8,300 NIL deals. Total value is $80 million. And,
I mean, most of that is, I mean, you talk about free market, we're good friends. You talk about free market, private sector, most of that is free market, private sector. Are we going to limit that? I mean, based on what you're telling me. This other stuff is going to.
you're limiting it though, right?
What's that?
Does your bill not limit it?
I can't hear.
Does your bill not limit it? Isn't the purpose of the
We
bill?
did not
to
limit it. No, we did not limit it. The private NIL does not limit. We're just talking about the revenue sharing.
Okay.
Some schools can opt out as well. We give them that opportunity, particularly the smaller schools. And we're trying to also get revenue to the Olympic sports and the women's sports. And most of that comes from football and basketball, let's face it. Some from
right.
baseball, but not much. Go ahead.
I mean, the revenue sharing cap that you're referring to at 22% is a floor, not a ceiling.
Okay.
It was also agreed to by the students, the athletes, in the House versus NCAA court agreement at that point. So again, this does ultimately say that, if there's going to be some type of fairness within the athletic funding system, revenue sharing, that there has to be provisions like this that would really caution schools against going higher, unless, of course, there's revenue to do that. But this does set that requirement, and it also requires the sports that must be there, which protects women's sports.
Yeah, we got to have
Olympic
16.
sports and
Yeah.
all the rest.
We got to have 16 sports in a
If you have
university.
football, you have to have 16.
Yeah, unless it's a small school that doesn't get a lot of revenue, and
Right.
we make an exception for them. But otherwise, we want the 16 sports. Those are the Olympic sports, the women's sports. It would mandate that they're offered in that
Well,
particular
virtually
university.
every-
I mean, we talk about wrestling. I mean, you don't have college wrestling in the South in a lot of cases. And
Virtually
that's a shame.
it's going to apply to virtually every D1 school, I would assume. Correct. And if you're not a D1 school, then you're probably not going to be brought into this. Is that a
Well,
fair
that's-
statement?
It's up to the D1 school in a lot of cases.
Well,
They
just
have the
by
I mean,
virtue of
the
the,
D3 school, because they have an opportunity to opt out if they'd like to.
I don't think they're going to have the revenue at a,
Well, some of them won't have football
It only applies to D1.
it only applies
Only
to
applies to
D1.
D1 schools.
Okay, all right. Let me say this. It is,
true.
and I know somebody, and I don't know personally the athlete, but they play pro ball now. But one time, several years ago, well, they're retired now, a friend of mine asked one of the Georgia Bulldogs new players what he liked most about being a Georgia Bulldog. And the answer was, I get to have my own bed. And my point is this, a lot of these athletes grow up extremely poor. And a about that same time, a friend of mine who was part of one of the bigger schools' foundations, who was fairly wealthy, wanted to, I was not in Congress at the time, but wanted to change the laws so that the foundations could buy disability contracts on the athletes that had a significant opportunity to go pro.
Yeah.
And nothing was ever done about that. But you can't blame somebody who grew up with very little from the standpoint of monetary things. And they can
Yeah.
be very rich in other things, but I'm talking about very little monetarily, who has the opportunity to go pro. You can't blame them for not finishing school and going pro. But we never did anything. Nothing was ever done to help those athletes that had a big payday coming at the end of their college careers. And unfortunately, because nothing was done to help them back when it should have been done, now the system's all messed up. I respect both of you. I'm not sure how I'm gonna vote on the piece of legislation. I'm gonna continue to read it and look at it. I don't think that the NIL is the end all be all of D1 college athletics. I think the portal have done more damage. I don't necessarily understand all of it. I'll be honest with you, but I appreciate all of you. And Mr. Wahlberg, you seem to have something you want to say.
I guess I would just underscore what you're saying and the concerns that are there. And I think this act, again, we're looking at the decision in House versus NCAA, establishing a pattern, students agreeing to that, but understanding that that's the case and not wanting this to continue to be a court case. This is a provision. This SCORE Act is an attempt to give a fair approach. And again, I'm still a guy that believes college sports ought to be college sports. I was a wrestler. I'd
I
never
understand. I
I'd
think
never
it
get
should
this
be
stuff
too.
NIL. Now, Jim Jordan might, but I certainly wouldn't get it. But in order to deal with reality without the ability to turn back time, we're attempting to do the best we can. On the issue of your concerns, the SCORE Act requires comprehensive support, including academic counseling, degree completion assistance programs, financial literacy training, medical care for injuries that are ongoing, preparing student athletes for life after sports. Those provisions, I think, are important. While the student has revenue sharing protections there, but he also has the NIL that he can gain additional dollars from as well, which hopefully will encourage him to take assistance of all of the academic impact that he's going to have, plus the additional financial literacy and all of that your friend that you're talking about didn't have.
Yeah, so again, Mr. Scott, we've improved, this bill improves all that. The stakeholders, in the interest of time, I would say 99% of the stakeholders have had input on this bill, and they're very pleased with the bill. We talk about healthcare. You just said it, Mr. Chairman. The student athletes, they'll have support and services related to mental health, strength and conditioning, nutrition, sexual violence prevention, just to name a few. So we've covered this. And then post eligibility, they'll have their health benefits as well. Including out-of-pocket expenses for mental health services, any injuries. I mean, it was well thought out. Read it real good, and then let me know on the floor if you have any questions, because I'd be happy to go
Well,
elaborate.
I mean,
even further.
I will tell you, I mean,
Yeah,
and
take a
I don't
look
want to
at
believe
it.
this, but I do have a problem with the federal government setting a contract rate between two private individuals. I know, anyway, I appreciate both of you. It's 8,300 NIL deals, total of $80 million for 2025.
Mr. Scott, it's 16 and a half minutes. Thank you. Ms. Leisure Fernandez.
And we addressed the transfer portal as well, by the way.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to follow up on the comments that I think both my Republican colleagues made with Chairman and and Mr. Bilirakis, is with regards to that, you would not support the bill that was crafted and the amendments by Lori Trahan. And I guess, and another comment,
I haven't seen the amendment crafted by Lori Trahan.
you just said that there were
I
amendments.
haven't,
You
you're
have
talking about the
not-
bill that was filed?
You have not seen the bill. The collegiate, the CARE Act. the ca- Yeah, but many of these provisions, okay, well, maybe you would support these provisions. Would you support then provisions which provided a requirement that there be reporting on the money that is being spent on the participation of both women and men in college sports?
I think we cover that under our bill.
I don't think you covered it
Yeah,
because you did
I-
not
I believe
explicitly.
I believe
You
we
did not
do.
explicitly require that there be reporting on women participation in this and how then that complies with Title IX.
Well,
Because
let me just say this, in general, I will say the board, the IIAA board is required to have the same amount of women and men. When we make these decisions, this board makes these decisions with regard to
But
this
if we do
particular
not-
act.
if-
So in general, I'd say yes, but in addition to that, I think there are reporting
The reporting is
requirements.
already required.
But we want to make sure is that
Required,
there is
right?
Already required.
reporting
It's
that
definitely required.
that includes what is happening with regards to women athletes. And I think that one of the reasons why we have so many organizations that have objected to your bill is because there isn't enough protection for women athletes. To have a reference that says Title IX is fine isn't enough if we do not actually have the ability to enforce Title IX.
I
And let me-
disagree as far as organizations objecting to the
Oh.
bill. I know of one.
Well, you know of one. If you know of one, let me mention some of the other ones. We have the National Basketball Players Association, the American Federation of Labor and Congress, AFL-CIO, the National Women's Soccer League Players Association, the National Football League Players Association, the Women's National Basketball Players Association, the National Hockey League Players Association, the Professional Hockey Players Association, the Major League Basketball Players Association. So you go on and on and on. And there are lots of organizations, especially organizations that refer and advocate on behalf of women's athletes that have a problem with this bill. And I think that part of why we have a problem is that we need to start protecting the ability of us to enforce Title IX and to gather the information that is required under Title IX. And so when we look at that, those were some of the issues that Representative Bonamici, you were raising. And can you go on and tell us why this bill is still insufficient with regards to Title IX?
Thank you.
93 organizations.
150, almost 150 organizations
But he
support
just
it.
said, but what he just said was there was only one organization that was opposed. And if you
No,
look
I
at it,
didn't say
these-
that. I said I know of one.
You know.
I
of one.
didn't say,
Okay,
I
you
did
know
not
of one.
say,
And these
So-
are
One
college
others.
organizations.
You know of one.
University organizations.
how many, 150? you said?
Almost 150.
Almost 150.
Okay, so, but there are many who actually are representing the players, and this is part of the problem, is that you have NCAA, right? You have the big guys who are getting the benefits, and you're cutting off the recourse for the players and for people, the regular folks, and that's what keeps happening here, is that these Republican bills keep providing all the power to the people who already have the power. And they're cutting off the ability of the players and the regular folks to be able to fight against it. And that's exactly what our ranking member Pallone was right here. But I had asked a question of Representative Bonamici when my colleagues wanted to make sure I saw their list. Representative Bonamici, could you tell us why people are still upset about how this bill fails to protect Title IX and women athletes?
Thank you very much, Representative Leger Fernandez. Yes, there are still concerns, and they are concerns that we attempted to address in the committee that were not resolved. And as I explained when I was responding to Representative Scanlon, there were a couple of amendments, and I mentioned Representative Baumgartner's amendment that failed, Representative Adams' amendment that failed, but then there were more. For example, Representative Adams proposed another amendment that was simply required additional data collection by schools on athletic activity already mandated by the Higher Education Act. Because you talked about how we need this information, particularly because of the need to understand what's happening. It would have required further data disaggregated by gender to show the number of amounts spent on scholarships, compensation of coaches, revenues and expenses, et cetera. This amendment also failed, even though it had bipartisan support from Representative Baumgartner. Then there was another amendment Representative Ansari introduced that focused on another aspect of Title IX, also not addressed specifically in the bill, still ambiguous, and with the understanding that Title IX does not apply to the NCAA, that would have required the amendment would have required schools to maintain policies that at a minimum would require the employees of the athletic department to be trained to recognize sex discrimination and be a reporter of such discrimination. That amendment also failed. So even though there is a sort of cryptic provision in there saying this doesn't change Title IX, it does because of the reasons that I mentioned, and also because, as I said, Title IX does not apply to the NCAA. So there are still issues that we tried to address in the committee that are not addressed. And I agree that this is overall a bill that takes power from the players and gives more power to the entities that already have the power. I was reading a comparison with the NFL and the number of players that they have. And I'm trying to pull it up here. There are approximately 17,000 players in the NFL. And I'm hearing my colleagues' concerns on the other side of the aisle about how college football doesn't really feel like college football anymore. I'm not suggesting that it's the NFL, but it's certainly feeling more like a professional league. The NFL represents 17,000 football players. They have a collective bargaining agreement that's about 500 pages long. I'm not suggesting 500 pages is what we need, but the SCORE Act is what, 30-some pages or for more than 500,000 athletes. So what we're talking about today with the SCORE Act does not solve the issues that were raised, that we debated in the committee with bipartisan support. I hope that we can stop this bill now and get back to the table and address some of these issues that obviously have bipartisan concern, as they did in the committee.
Representative Pallone.
Well, I just wanted to say, now you referenced this, that in my opening remarks, I said that the bill does not provide meaningful, strong, or enforceable protections for athletes' health and safety. And I defy my Republican colleagues to say that that's not true, right? In other words, what have the athletes done? If they've had safety problems, they've gone to the states, and some of the states have passed laws. They've gone to the courts if they've been harmed, right? Perfect example is the preemption of state laws that some state laws, for example, have limited the season or limited the practice time, or in other words, abuse that comes from, long hours of practice, lengthening the seasons, all these things in order to, lengthen the season, obviously make a lot more money, right? And once you preempt those state laws, or you preempt the right of action in the courts to deal with these, then they don't exist. So, again, my Republican colleagues say, oh, we'll mention that. But it doesn't matter if there's no way to enforce it, and if they're preempting the way to go to the court or the state that has set these standards. They don't set those standards the way the states do.
So I think that this is really key, that this point you raise, and Representative Bilirakis, Section 12 is a problem because Section 12 preempts all compensation. So Representative Bilirakis, let's say that a state decides to provide compensation for sexual abuse or sexual harassment, and let's face it, women college athletes have suffered from sexual abuse and sexual harassment, and especially some horrible examples that we do not need to repeat here because we've all seen the papers on them. So let's say they create a compensation fund or they create certain requirements. This section 12, Billerica, I read this and it preempts that kind of compensation that a state could do, right?
Well, let me just, if you don't mind, can I interject? I'd like to, Madam Chair. Again, the bill does not, and I said this before, does not preempt state laws of general applicability, such as consumer protection. Okay, we talk about sexual harassment, contract law, obviously, labor standards or other laws that apply broadly outside of college sports. That's a good example. And we have enforcement mechanisms in the bill. We've got the state's attorney general's office. We have the FTC.
So what's going on here is that Republicans in Congress and a few Democrats are trying to give even more power to the NCAA around NIL rules. And part of this is a flipping of the Supreme Court case of 2021, NCAA versus Alston, that gave a lot of power to the athletes with regard to name, image, and likeness. And of course, colleges weren't happy about that. So of course, they gave their lobbied members and sent them a bunch of money. And now we're having this conversation about NIL rules in college sports. And as you can imagine, part of the argument for that Supreme Court case was whether or not a college athlete is an employee of the college. And so when you designate somebody an employee, they get all the rights therein with regard to suing, employment, et cetera, and so on. Obviously, somebody bringing in millions and billions to the college, if that person is not an employee, that's interesting. So that designation is important here. That hasn't come up in the conversation yet. But the very fact that they're even talking about this would tell you that millions and billions of dollars are involved in these TV contracts. Of course, the NCAA gets it, that are into the millions, and then of course billions. And compensation is all going in one direction, as everybody knows. So the fact that this is even coming up is it would tell you, of course, that this is involving a lot of money, which it is.
That this gets to another thing is the lack of the ability, and Mr. Scott was getting to this a bit, but the lack of the ability of the student to have a private right of action is really galling because it's the students who are going to be harmed by this. And another issue that I'm very concerned about is this issue of antitrust. And Madam Chair, I'd like seek unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter dated November 18th, 2025, that comes from both former Republican and Democratic administrators who were in charge of antitrust enforcement.
Without objection.
And the fact that I heard Mr. Bellarica say that, oh, but we're codifying what was happening in-house. And we're not.
We're
You're actually creating antitrust immunity. And if anything, I would think that Republicans would not want to say, you're supposed to be out about competition. You should not be granting the NCAA antitrust immunity. And I say this letter from Republican former administrator says, in our view, any proposal combining an antitrust exemption while also preempting labor law protections is codifying and freezing in place a one-sided economic structure. And this is the problem, is this is benefiting the NCAA, and it is not providing the kind of benefit to the student athletes or the public at large. Representative
I disagree.
Ranking Member Pallone.
I disagree. The bill's preemption, again, let's talk about preemption. When I talked about codify, I was talking about the revenue sharing
Representative Billarica.
with regard to the pool. So, but yes.
Representative Billarica, I'm sorry, I'll get to you in a minute. I know you have Republicans who will ask you questions, but I wanted to be able to have a Representative Pallone respond because he had wanted to address this.
Well,
I had directed my question at him, but if the chairwoman grants me time, I will ask you a question later, Representative Pallone, ranking member.
Well, I just wanted to, you talked about the antitrust, and we have a letter. I don't know if, Madam Chair, if I'm allowed to ask something be put in the record.
Certainly.
This is from AGs in a number of states, including Florida, Georgia, New York, several actually.
If you
And
want to enter it into the record.
yeah, if I could, it's
And
from,
the title of it is?
it's a letter to, I guess, the chairs of the committees that are here on the panel, from a bunch of attorney generals, including.
Okay,
Okay.
without objection.
But I just wanted to read.
Madam Chair, can I dispute that? I mean, that is
Well, I haven't got it
true.
yet.
That is so true, that document, but we've made changes to the particular, this
Well-
particular bill with regard to AGs. So they have direct enforcement under Article 4.
Well, I don't
So
agree with
Not-
that.
it's correct, but it's old.
Mr. Bilirakis, let me suggest that you submit for the record what you specifically counter on this letter.
Absolutely. And
Okay,
it's in the bill. So
Okay,
thank
well,
you.
it's in the bill.
But I
if-
will, yeah.
If you want to submit specific points, thank you. And I go back to Mr. Colon.
And I just wanted to read one paragraph if I could, because I think it addresses what Ms. Ledger Fernandez said. And it says, simply put, the SCORE Act consolidates too much power in the hands of the NCAA. The NCAA is a cartel that has consistently abused its monopolistic control, even in the absence of a legislative blank check to do so. The founders of our great nation recognize that the concentration of power inevitably corrupts, and that only a system constrained by checks and balances is accountable to the people can endure over time. By eliminating any serious check on NCAA authority, we expect the SCORE Act will ultimately deliver arbitrary and unaccountable enforcement by an NCAA fully empowered to be more overbearing than it has ever been before. That's sort of their.
Yeah, in other words, this bill gives a bunch of power to the NCAA over the student athletes. What a shock. I can't believe that's
I'm
happening.
way past even.
Well, as I
what,
recall, we don't really have specific time limits, but and since I am the last Democrat, if I could, I think that you could be real quick, Representative.
I can be very quick. Thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify on the healthcare issue because you were asking questions about that as well. There is a limitation to 3 years following graduation. And as we know, many sports injuries do not show in that period of time. So there's no permanent care. Also, there's no requirement for any institution to ensure collateralize if they're self-insured. And so that's hugely problematic if the college, as some do, fold. And then finally, we tried to increase the 3 years to 10 years. Representative Courtney offered that amendment, but it did not fail. So we tried to address the healthcare issues.
Thank you,
and
and
they did
thank you
not.
for being brief. And with that, Madam Chair, I shall yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Leisure Fernandez. Mr. Griffith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam
Morgan
Chair.
Griffiths.
I would ask my colleague Gus Bilirakis if there's anything else that he wanted to say briefly.
Well, no, with regard to the prevention provision, the preemption provision, it's narrowly tailored to preempt state laws that attempt to regulate the specific core areas of collegiate athletics, including compensation, benefits, or employment status of a student athlete, eligibility periods or academic standards to participate, recruitment, transfer rules, and intercollegiate athletic playing seasons. Listen, folks, it's broken. It's
But
broken.
let me-
It's
let me-
Wild West,
let me-
and we gotta fix it.
Mr. Bilirakis.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this, though.
Yeah.
This would not preempt any state tort action for improper acts related to sexual misconduct, would it?
Absolutely not. It would not preempt.
I yield back.
Thank you very much.
Morgan
And,
Griffith always thinks he's
I
so
thank
brilliant
our
and says
panel for
weird
being
stuff and then
here.
disappears.
I believe there are no further questions for you. Yeah, I am going to ask our representatives from the Education Committee to remain for the second panel. So Mr. Pallone, Mr. Bilirakis, we thank you for your coming to testify, and you're excused.
We thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just request a 2 minutes?
Hmm. So that right there was a discussion about a bill called the SCORE Act with regard to name, image, and license rules in college sports. And what a surprise. The bill would hand more power and control to the NCAA. For some reason, two black members of Congress are involved in this. Shamari Figures of Alabama and Janelle Bynum of Oregon. I suspect that that has something to do with the colleges that are in their district or nearby. All right, I'm going to go ahead and guess. At any rate, we're going to have at 9 o'clock a discussion about Shador Sanders, who I can't help but to think about in this moment. What has happened in college sports is they're making millions and millions of dollars. These colleges, the NCAA is making millions and millions of dollars off the TV rights, off of the name, image, and likeness of these students. And of course, they sued. They won in front of the Supreme Court in 2021, unanimous decision. Now here comes a bill to undo that and give a bunch of power back to the NCAA. What a shock. What a surprise. What a surprise. What happened to free markets? And what happened to competition? It's incredible how all that changes once a bunch of young kids start getting big, big money. And this bill,
And now welcome our
Republican
second panelist,
opposition, and it's actually
Mr.
interesting to listen
Walter and
because there
Mr.
was a lot of Republican opposition to this bill in that conversation, which says that they don't have the votes. I can't imagine that most of the members on the Democratic side be voting in favor this year, effectively voting to take control away from college athletes, and that is not a popular thing at all. So at any rate, this is the Rules Committee, so they decide how the bill will be considered on the floor in this session. But this is, of course, whether or not it'll pass, of course, a different topic altogether.
Rates our education system, and that's an understatement. They have infiltrated. While estimates vary, there's evidence that the CCP has directly influenced at least 500 American K-12 schools.
Yeah, okay. This is a different bill and a different topic. So at any rate, yeah, this topic I was supposed to talk about Venezuela, but that was a lot more interesting than Venezuela. Whether or not we're going to war in Venezuela is the open question. Apparently, there is some cabinet meeting happening at the White House right now with regard to that. And, Trump's cabinet meetings are very rambling and directionless, so it's always hard to keep up with that. But anyway, 9 o'clock, we're going to talk about Shador Sanders and some of the things that have been observed with regard to the way he's been treated by the NFL, this ridiculous draft position. And now, of course, finally, he has been given the role of the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, which should have happened in the first place. And it's outrageous that it didn't, and it took this long to get to where it is now. So at any rate, this is Lauren Burke, and sorry to switch the topics, but this was something I thought it would come up later in this hearing, but it came up right away. Name, image, and likeness, and interesting discussion. And we'll see if it hits the House floor. That sounded like they didn't have the it sounded like they didn't have the votes. And I'm hearing certain Republicans, basically say that they're not for this. So that would tell me that this probably won't hit the floor this week, but I'll check back in again. Damon, how you doing? The NCAA should be dismantled. It's incredible. It's just a money-making machine. All of these things are really modeled after the music business and, dare I say, chattel slavery. It's all about people who have the talent out there doing the work, and then people who don't have any talent that are not doing the work making all the money. That's all the bottom line of the entire thing. And the setup is always the same. The people who don't have any talent, who are not doing the work, who are not on the field making the plays, throwing the football, running down the field, the whole bit, they're the people making most of the money. Right there, something's wrong with that paradigm. So at any rate, I'll be back at 9 o'clock with Shador Sanders, but we're talking about Shador Sanders. I wish I had an interview with him, but I do not. At any rate, I may be a little delayed because I have to watch the Giants, but the Giants are 2-10. I'll just sort of have that on maybe in the background, looking off to the side. But Giants aren't very good. But when you're a fan, and that's really just how it is. So at any rate, I will be back very soon. And this was very interesting that that Congress is talking about NIL rules is very fascinating. This is, of course, not about NIL rules. This is about who controls the money and who gets the money and how that money is doled out to the people who do the work or not.
Somewhere. What's going on? Thank you. Are you watching now?
Yeah. No, I was watching when I left, but it's excellent. I love it. I love the traffic's blowing up. You were in Brooklyn last night. Where?
I was in Bushwick.
Okay, I have my grandmother's house is in Crown Heights.
Oh, yeah.
So when I saw you, I was trying to look at what the pizza place was to see where.
As soon as we got there, someone recognized the pizza place. They're like, we gotta get out of here. Someone had
Get out. It was great.
blown up our spot.
This show is freaking fantastic.
Thank you.
Love it. Love it, man. Love it.